Zoltan Istvan is a journalist, entrepreneur, and futurist who's been spearheading the transhumanist movement in America. He founded the Transhumanist Party in early 2014 and ran for the post of the President of the United States in 2016. He is the Libertarian Vice Presidential Candidate for the 2020 American election with a pitch to upgrade America leveraging science and technology. I wish you enjoyed this conversation.
So tell me, what is transhumanism in simple and plain words so my audience gets to know about it? And please feel free to shock me, surprise me, scare me, and enlighten us about what transhumanism is all about.
Sure. Well, transhumanism is a social movement now of many millions of people around the world that want to use science and technology to radically modify the human body and also to modify the human experience. It can be anything kind of from exoskeleton suits to brain implants, to even things like driverless cars. But whatever it is, it's kind of the most radical science and technology that's out there.
Lovely. So right now, today, I think our world is presently grappling with COVID-19, right? Everybody is on lockdown, and I think it's going to have like long-standing impact, on each and every one, I mean, individuals, startups, companies, organization, government, economy, and stuff like that. Yeah, I just read an article recently that in America, there's over 10 million Americans who have applied for unemployment benefits, right? So that's like a huge problem over there. Besides, here in India, we've got like huge population. It's 1.3 billion people, and there's a large number of population who are daily wage laborers, right? I mean, if they don't work, they don't get food in their mouth. You have been a proponent for universal basic income, right? So where do you think that stands? Like, if today, if and only if UBI was implemented, at least in India, there would be millions who would at least have food in the mouth, because even that's a problem at this point. Your views?
Well, I mean, first off, I am a big supporter of universal basic income, and it's sad that we don't have one. And the reason we want one is exactly for a moment like right now when, many laborers have lost their jobs. They don't have a safety net to rely on. They may be kicked out of their houses that they rent. They may not have enough food for their children. A universal basic income would take that. The only good thing here is that because of COVID-19, America and many governments around the world are starting to take universal basic income much more seriously. And I believe that we're going to start seeing it implemented on a global level at some point, because it really is perhaps the only way to deal with such an acute crisis as we have now.
Right. So do you think that even these emerging technology will be kind of like nudged forward? Because I mean, if you see at this point in time, I mean, we all working remotely, right? I mean, that's what we've been forced to do. That we don't have an option at this point in time. So there are these technologies like virtual reality and things like that, which could take the remote work, remote healthcare, remote education to next level, right? And I think the basis of transhumanism is merging with technology. So do you think that somehow this natural disaster will kind of push forward the conversation of adoption of technologies?
Yes, I absolutely do think that. I think for sure the fact that we're kind of doing all this remote schooling, we're doing virtual reality, explorations that people haven't ever done, with your kids because the kids are at home. And I mean, there's a huge amount of just brand new technology that people are getting time to have, to experiment with for the very first time. And as a result, they're becoming more comfortable with technology, more comfortable with the different types of, ways of using technology in their lives. And I think that's, a very good thing in terms of the transhumanist movement.
As humans, we have been augmenting ourselves since ages, right? I mean, there's been, we do makeup, we've been using plastic surgeries, we've been augmenting ourselves through body part enhancement and stuff like that. Health augmentation obviously is a different thing. We have stents at this point in time, cochlear implants, and the lenses, and so many, So, you also have an implant, right?
Yes, I have an implant in my hand right here.
Right.
Just a small one can open my front door and little things like that.
So does that get an upgrade now? Because I'm sure you must have had that put in possibly maybe a couple of years earlier. With technology moving forward, what's the step ahead? Where does humanity go with transhumanism? Do we have these implants? What?
Well, it's funny because the implant 4 or 5 years ago when I got it, was actually very new, and I thought it was going to be very useful. But it turns out that you can do almost all the exact same things that you can do. Like you can start a car with your implant. But now the one that's probably leading the race in terms of technology like that kind of replaces a wallet, replaces a key, is the iris scan or even the face scan. So you don't even need to put anything in your body, because if you go to, like, let's say a coffee shop and it has the proper scanner, it just scans your face and says, oh, you're Zoltan. I have your credit card and file. You're paying your coffee just by looking at it. Or you're starting your car because it it knows exactly what your facial features like. So you don't even need to get the implant anymore. That's really interesting, because 5 years ago, we didn't think that such technology would come around so fast. We thought the implant was the best technology, but it turns out that probably even in a couple more years, there'll be even different types of technology. Maybe the way that you breathe or your smell or something like that. But whatever it is, it just keeps getting easier and quicker. And, it's all part of the transhumanist journey forward, that we don't have to interact when we go to a grocery store. We don't have to ask questions. We don't have to do this. We just, like, everything, AI is there, and it kind of knows what you want, knows how you want to get it, knows the be more efficient, speed, protects your wallet. And, so that's kind of where we're heading. And of course, this is all part of the transhumanist movement, even though it's just a small part.
Right. So yes, I mean, obviously, the when you're early in the curve, the first mover, obviously, I mean, it's a lot of excitement, because you're doing stuff which is, like, I mean, way ahead than anybody else can even think or imagine, right? But yes, because you're so ahead, it comes with these technical drawbacks, right? I mean, but yes, like you said, right now we have the capabilities of building these implants through other ways, and maybe being more potential, right? So yes, I mean, we have tools like CRISPR-Cas9 genetic editing, where people are talking about, like, maybe designer babies. That's not now, maybe in the future. But with these technologies, you see what life could look like if you take some time and spend carefully and have a foresight of vision. You understand, oh wow, artificial intelligence can do that, virtual reality can do that, nanotechnology can do that. So as a tech proponent, I'm extremely excited about the possibilities of it, but at the same time, I'm a little apprehensive also, because I want to go slow. I want to take each baby steps at a time and kind of handhold the community together. So because I think technology is a double-edged sword, right? I mean, it's got these positive, it's got these negatives also. So what are your views? Do you think in the future, with the transhumanist movement pushing forward, will these implants, will technologies like CRISPR-Cas9 genomic editing, will it give humanity, or especially not humanity, at least the well-heeled in the society, a unfair advantage?
Well, I mean, I think it will definitely give an unfair advantage, and it's up to people to try to make sure that that's fair. In fact, it's really up to, in many ways, it's up to governments to kind of mandate that that's fair. The great question right now, for example, is China is sort of leading the world in the genetic editing race, and they've already done some genetic editing on the embryonic level with children before they were born, so that when they got born, they had genetic modifications. And of course, they're obviously working on also at some point how to make the brain smarter, and maybe even an entire generation of Chinese children might be tried to be born to be higher IQs. But how does that relate to the rest of us living in other parts of the world? Is it fair? But there's a certain amount of competition involved. That's why no country, even if you're kind of afraid, can put too much on the brakes of the technological development, because you don't want another country to get ahead of you. But it's if one country does get ahead, then I think we'll have to catch up and try to stay the same. But genetic editing through higher IQs might be a good idea for the next 5-10 years. But then someone's going to invent a brain implant that connects to your brain and connects to the cloud, and now you're smarter than the person with the hardwiring biological IQ, because your brain is always connected to the internet. So different technologies can also accomplish different things. But whatever it is, I can tell you it's going to be completely ethically challenging for everybody. But still, there's really no way to back down, because if you back down even for just a year, another society or another country gets the edge, and then they maybe get all the patents, and then they, that extra year of learning puts them in the forefront of the world. So it's kind of a race to become who's the most intelligent through transhumanist technologies.
Right. I think you rightfully said. I think we're all running in this race, and it looks like largely the race seems to be, with no destination. Because if you see, I mean, we humans are not very smart at taking care of ourselves, right? I mean, we largely, I mean, inflict harm on our species ourselves, right? I mean, yes, China is leading at this point in time. It's not just in genetic engineering, but also in artificial intelligence, also in quantum computing, also in virtual reality, right? And because they are not a democratic nation, I mean, the engineers over there are forced to do what the government would want them to achieve, right? Unlike the other parts of the world, right? But yes, I mean, we are in a race to nowhere, and it can get ethically challenging because, I mean, all of these people, if technology goes in the hand of the wrong people, it can be a serious existential threat. So you were running for the president in the year 2016. So why politics, and what was the agenda of the Transhumanist Party?
Sure, sure. So, in 2014, I formed the Transhumanist Party because in America, we just did not have a science party, like a political party representing science. So this was what I did. And then I became the presidential nominee and I ran there. And then I also, I've done a number of different government runs or campaigns. I ran for governor in California in 2018. And actually now I'm running for the vice presidency of the United States as a libertarian. In fact, we just made our announcement today. And because they make a decision to pick the vice president in the Libertarian Party for whoever the nominee is in a convention in about 5 weeks in May. And so I now put myself on the ballot for the Libertarian Party. Of course, it doesn't mean you win the presidency. It just means you win the nomination of the party, and then you go on to compete for the presidency and the vice presidency. But I'm actually going for the vice presidency. But the point is, there's not enough science in politics. And so what I do in American politics is I do these campaigns. And while I probably won't win anytime soon, I bring science to the forefront of the media and the forefront of the political discussion so that at least some people get a chance to discuss it. Because don't you think that, discussing whether you increase your IQ through genetic editing or AI implants, I mean, this is very important stuff. This is stuff that all governments should be discussing. And yet none of our major politicians do discuss it because it sounds so weird. But yet we need to discuss it because it's right around the corner. I live in Silicon Valley, and I assure you, there are companies spending hundreds of millions of dollars on all these technologies, hoping to be the very first to be there in the next few years with some of these ideas. I mean, even Elon Musk has a brain implant company, Neuralink. He's trying to get us to think in real time in the clouds. And he says he'll have a device in 3 or 4 or 5 years.
Right. Yeah. So it's somehow extremely scary that the tool which has augmented mankind is not being pushed forward. You rightfully said, we need these forums or community or people who push forward the discussion of science and technology to a larger audience and make people aware that this is not something which we need to get scared of. This is something that we need to adapt and move ahead, because that's the only way human as a mankind, the species, will reach its true potential. So Aubrey de Grey, David Sinclair, and others, they're working on age reversal. So I mean, largely, I mean, I would like to feel that we're still far away from age reversal and immortality. But yes, there have been progress because there's so many people, I think, working together at this point in time. The Google's Calico, Peter Diamandis, Human Longevity, David Sinclair, Aubrey de Grey, and there's so many others who are working on it. You had made a statement, which I read, that humans could live for 5,000 or 10,000 years and beyond. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, I think within 25 years, we will have the scientific ability to largely slow down aging and hopefully even keep people from dying. And if not 25 years, definitely within 35 or 40 years. Most people die because an organ fails. And there are numerous companies working on 3D printed organs, stem cell injected organs, bionic organs, like artificial hearts. So we're getting better and better at actually creating people to live longer and longer. The question, though, is when do we get good enough where people don't actually die? And then the bigger question is, when can we reverse aging, like rejuvenate the cells so that you and I can actually not age or even become younger? And that's probably, like I said, between 25 to 40 years out. Yeah, that's where I think the technology will start to happen. And I think, first off, the one thing I think the listeners, viewers should know is that the amount of money going into the life extension movement, to transhumanism, and transhumanism, number one goal is life extension, living as long as you can, is just increased tremendously. Thousands and thousands of percent of increase in just the last few years. All of a sudden, it's a lot of billionaires came on board and said, wow, this is a very amazing challenge while I'm alive to try to conquer death. And so all of a sudden, this once fringe movement, once weird movement, has now been getting a huge amount of mainstream attention, as well as a lot of mainstream dollars from venture capitalists. They may not be interested in living forever, but they're putting their money there because they think they can make a fortune on other people wanting to live thousands of years. And look, once you get the technology to live 120 years, that extra 20 years of life, that'll take you to the next level where then they'll have anything you want. Robotic arms, robotic brains, or biological. You regrow your arms through genetic editing or stem cells or whatever it is. So if you can just live an extra 20, 30, 40 years from now, you have a very good chance of being able to live as long as you like. So you just have to make it to this next window. I can't tell you how important it is. The next 25 years is very important to try to survive, because once we start getting to some of these amazing technologies, we're all going to want to be there to see what's going to happen. And if we choose to go down that road, maybe some people won't want to live, indefinitely. But I think a lot of people will probably say, well, let's do it a little bit. And then they'll see what comes next. And, they'll probably keep saying that for thousands of years.
Completely. So yes, I like you, am really looking forward for that technology. But today, when people make these bold statements, they are largely ridiculed. But these and these it's only once you achieve them, then the perspective changes, and then you are a hero, and then you are somebody who's a visionary and stuff like that. So yes, like you, I also believe that conquering death, I mean, if and when we achieve it, I think that would be the most important invention of mankind, because I have family members or friends who are elderly people, and every day you have to see them die, and I've had these conversations with my in-laws. They're about 670, and they're God-fearing, right? So when you talk to them that maybe in another 15 years, 20 years, like people might not die and stuff like that, they get a little harrowed. They say, Eddie, stop that. I mean, that's not cool. I mean, you cannot play God and things like that. So I feel that's quite it's a human block. And in India we have 330 million gods. It gets very, very funky out here. What are your views on religions? And yeah, what are your views on religion?
Well, I think, to be honest, religion, at least, so first off, Hinduism, I think, and even just Confucianism and Taoism have actually been probably helpful to the transhumanist movement. Because with so many hundreds of thousands of gods, of course, you have some gods that would support immortality through science and other things like that. You can at least make it work in your culture. But where I come from, the president, the vice president, our Supreme Court, every single member of Congress, they believe in the Judeo-Christian God, which says you should die to go meet your maker. And that's a sad thing, because those same people are responsible for the medical budgets of the United States of America, but they don't want to spend money on anti-aging technologies or on transhumanism because they believe that it's good to die. And I'm not saying they want to die tomorrow, but they believe that it's natural. Of course, transhumanists don't believe in the natural. We believe in just using our fingers and our hands to create whatever it is we want. And if that's to create a body that doesn't fail or ever die, then that's what we want to do. So I think religion has dramatically gotten in the way of living much longer. And maybe that's one of the reasons why China seems to be doing so well as kind of one of the leading transhumanist nations in the world is they're mostly secular. They don't really have these issues.
Yeah, at this point in time, there are people who are self-preserving themselves. I mean, with cryogenics and things like that. There's xenotransplantation which is going to come in. Could you shine a little more light on cryogenics?
Sure. Well, cryogenics is where people freeze themselves. Essentially, freeze is not really the right word, but they put themselves in a very deep cold in order to preserve their bodies in hopes to be woken up someday in 50 or 100 years when the medical technology is available to bring them back. And, there's about a couple hundred people that have done that in the United States.
There is this C. elegans worm, it's got 320 odd neurons, that's about it, right? So there is this team back in 2018, they copied the entire neuronal data of the C. elegans worm, how the synapses, the neurons fires and wires, and they copied the entire data, and because it's just 320 odd neurons, they uploaded the same onto a neural network, onto a computer, right? And the digital version of the C. elegans worm on stimulation reacted exactly how a physical C. elegans worm would react, right? So in theory, if and when we understand a complete cognitive structure, how 80 billion neurons and 100 trillion synapses fire and wire, and someday we should be able to upload our entire cognitive structure onto a computer. And once we have that, we will have double copies, digital copies. We'll be able to live forever. So, do you think you mentioned Elon Musk with Neuralink? There's Brian Johnson who's working on kernel. Do you think brain-computer interface will be the the most important technology to kind of push the transhumanist movement forward, or just humanity forward? The man-machine convergence.
I think for sure the most important technology probably in the next 20 years will be when we start combining our brains with machines. In fact, I know there's a lot of momentum with trying to use biology to make us live longer, but there's a good chance that we're going to get kind of to the end where we can reverse aging with our biology, but it won't even make a difference anymore because we'll have just connected our brain entirely to the computer or to some type of microchip where our thoughts are one with it. And I think once we get our brains hooked on kind of this idea of living forever in a computer where we probably have a lot more powers and we don't have to die. We have all these amazing things to do and we have different realities, hundreds of senses, and maybe not robotic bodies. Maybe we just live as ones and zeros, but we can go on indefinitely. I think once we get there, we probably don't come back. It's probably it's more singularity oriented. It's just much more interesting. But more importantly, it's more complex. And I think we'll probably stay there. And that's definitely the big future that I'm interested in.
Right. So, we are afraid of what we don't understand. I think that's always been the block. So Dr. Mukhopadhyay, he's this gentleman, he's a doctor from Calcutta. He was the one who created the world's second IVF baby. He was ostracized over here back then for playing God, shunned by the authority, and he actually had to kill himself, right? So today we have more than 8 million IVF baby. So what should be done to take this transhumanist message to the masses and make them realize the potential of it rather than demonizing it? And what are you doing to push the transhumanist movement forward?
Well, and this is the $1 million question. How can we normalize what you and I believe is normal and should be aspired to? I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. Transhumanism is about saving lives through radical technology and science, and also about becoming more and better than what we are right now. I mean, that sounds like a very normal thing. Like if you have children, of course you want your children to be better, and of course you want to protect their lives at all costs. Well, that's what transhumanism is, a very humanitarian movement. But unfortunately, when it comes down to robotics, arms, or when it comes down to, chips in your brain, or it comes down to genetic editing and brand new arms, all of a sudden people get like, oh, wow, it's too weird. It's freaking me out. It's very hard to tell an average person or a normal person, that we're going to get into this future and our body's going to be very different. we base so much of our perception, our philosophical premise of life on who we are. But I think it has to just start very early. I wonder, I have a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, and I wonder, because they've been using iPads and phones and everything from 11, 12 months on, they may be very different about the idea that technology can be a part of them, and maybe they're a part of technology. Whereas our generation, I'm 47, our generation is, maybe we're still a little bit too far away. And then my father's generation, they don't even get it at all. They're just like, they can't figure out how to type emails still. So the younger generation may really be embracing of transhumanism because they were it was normalized with it. But it's very hard to tell an older person right now that they should like these things, they should want these things. Most of them find them almost foreign or almost like aliens.
Right. So yes, congratulations for you running for the vice president candidate for this year's election. So your book Upgrading America has reached #1 in politics on Amazon. So could you share your campaign pitch and your vision for America?
Well, my campaign pitch is called Upgrading America. That's the hashtag, Upgrading America. And the idea is we're just trying to get, right now we have President Trump running the White House. And, I don't like to criticize presidents, but he's not very interested in science. He wasn't interested in science before the COVID-19. And I want a president who really loves science, loves, the scientific method, loves to think about things in terms of how can we make the world better through scientific progress. And that's a very challenging thing because most politicians don't think like that. So my version of politics is using the scientific method to govern the country and looking at how we can essentially really take a lot of the money from the military and put it into science. Instead of a military industrial complex, which is a huge part of America's economy, I want a science industrial complex. I want companies that used to make bombs to now be making artificial hearts. I want companies that made nuclear missiles to now be making robotic arms and things for other people that make them transhuman. That's the kind of future that I'm interested in, and that's how we upgrade America.
Lovely. So wish you the very best, Zoltan. Really appreciate you talking with us. So you summarized it. If a leader thinks and has a vision, what can be done to make the world better, and if we make these incremental steps towards that, I think we are good. We'll have a much better place. So wish you the very best for the campaign. Thank you for being part of Change and Possible podcast. And any last what you would want to share with all listeners?
Sure. Well, just if you want to find out more about my work, I've written 250 articles. Just Google a topic. Like if you want transhumanist sex, for example, I wrote an article for Vice about it. If you want something like exoskeleton suits for the disabled, I wrote an article for TechCrunch. If you want to know more about my implants, I wrote for the New York Times. So just Google my name and some type of topic, and you'll come up with one of the articles. So you don't have to even buy the books. It's just out there on the internet already. So you'll find something that you like, something crazy I've written.
Thank you, Zoltan. Really appreciate this, you being part of Change and Possible podcast. And to the listeners, if you like what you see in here, please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Bye-bye. Thank you, Zoltan. Really appreciate you giving time to us here. Thank you.